This is part 11 and part 12 of the Indian Constitution. We just covered part 10 of the Indian Constitution, so we will be studying part 11 and part 12 of the Indian Constitution. These two parts are quite vast, so please be patient and listen sincerely. So part 11 deals with the relations between the Union and states, and part 12 talks about finance, property, contracts, and suits. Okay, so part 11, relations between the Union and states. It's specifically related to the legislative and the administrative relations between the Union and states. Okay, in what ways is the Union and states related in terms of the overall administration? Okay, how do they coordinate with each other? How do they connect with each other? And also legislative relations between the Union and states. In what ways they coordinate between each other? In what ways they negotiated in the beginning? What are the legislative powers the Union has given to the states? And to what extent can the Union interfere in the legislative matters of the state? Okay, sometimes the Union can make laws, state laws, okay, at times of emergency and so forth. You will learn about that in part 11, relations between the Union and states. And in part 12, you will learn about finance, property, contracts, and suits, the financial relations between the Union and states. Okay, in what ways do they handle the different financial activities such as taxes, income tax, corporation tax, company tax, and so forth. And we have the property, which means assets owned by the government. Okay, some assets in our state are owned by the central government. And in what ways does the Union government discuss with the state government regarding the assets owned by the Union government but is situated in the state? So these are issues, okay? These are issues that we will be discussing in property, okay? Railway, for example, is a Union property, right? But it is administered by the state government, okay? So there are certain conditions, but some properties of the Union are directly administered by the Union, whereas some properties of the Union in the state are given to the states to handle. So there are various situations. So we will learn about the different situations. And contracts means any legal binding agreement, right, made by the government. So the contracts, we will learn about the legally binding agreements or legally binding documents, the legal documents of Nagaland. Is it accepted in Assam? Is Assam's document accepted in Nagaland? So it will talk about the relations. Again, is it accepted by the Union? Okay, what kind of contracts, what kind of agreements, what kind of legal document of the Union should be accepted by the state, right? And if the Union were to change anything related to the state, so what kind of the legal process that the central government needs to go through to change any kind of state law or anything affecting the state, right? It requires the recommendation of the president to protect the state and so forth. There are lots of things related to legal agreements. And suits means a suit is a legal case. Okay, a suit is a legal case. It's a civil legal case that is made by one party to another party. So supposing a contractor doesn't complete his work on time, then the government can file a civil suit against the contractor. Okay, so in the suit we will learn that the government can sue as well as can be sued. Okay, if we are dissatisfied with the government, we can also file a suit against the government. And if the government isn't satisfied with certain government employees, they can also file a suit. So these are the 4 subjects under part 12 of the Indian Constitution. Part 11, relations between the Union and states. Part 12, finance, property, contracts, and suits. Okay. Now this is what you will learn. I've explained that just now. You will learn how the distribution of legislative powers between the Union and the states. It's all about the relationship between the Union and states. Okay, legislative, administrative, and financial. And then you will learn about the center-state coordination in various matters. You will also learn about emergency changes. You will learn about property and contracts. So these articles, it ranges from Article 245 to Article 300A. Okay, Legislative 245 to 55, 56 to 63, 64 to 93 administrative, and then 94 to Article 300A, property, contracts, and suits in IGAZE. That's how the articles are divided. So we will learn about the legislative 245 to 55, and then we will switch to administrative 246 to 263, and then we will switch to financial, which is part 12. From part 11 we will move to part 12, 264 to 294, and then 293, and then from 294 to 300A, property, contracts, and suits. Okay, so let's first, this is a distinction. Part 11, legislative and administrative, and part 12, finance, property, contracts, and suits. Okay, remember that. Now, federal structure. The whole point of studying about the relationship between the center and the union government is to show that the Indian Constitution has created a federal system with a very strong center. Okay, you will find that in the legislative, certain laws can be created by the state, certain laws can be created by union. It's called union list, state list. Okay, union list and state list. The state will have power to make laws on certain subjects, and the union will have powers to make laws on certain subjects like railways, defense. All these are under union laws. Okay, they do not give power to the state. But you will find that there's also another list, which is a concurrent list. Both the union and the state can make laws related to concurrent list. Okay, but with a strong center, which means in case of disagreement between the union and the center, the Constitution mentions that it is the union that prevails over the state. Okay, union's decision will be taken ahead of the state's decision. So that's federalism, but with a strong center, with a unitary character. Okay, power is divided by the Constitution between the union and states. Neither can normally interfere with the other's sphere. Okay, so if it's a state subject, the state will make laws. If it's a union subject, the union will make laws. Okay. However, the Constitution gives the center greater authority during certain situations. Now, these are the articles covered. I've explained that. We will learn one by one. Okay. Now, legislative and administrative, part 11 of the Indian Constitution. Okay, relations between the union and states. Then financial, property, contracts, and suits, and right to property, part 12. Remember that. Now let's start with the first 245. Okay, Article 245. It says that extent of laws made by Parliament and state legislature. The extent to which the laws can be made by the union and the state. The Parliament can make laws for the entirety or any part of India, whereas the state can make laws only for that state. That's it. That's the only thing that Article 245 is stating. And subject matter of laws. Okay, this union list, different subjects are divided between union list, state list, and concurrent list. Okay, based on 7th schedule. Okay, the 7th schedule will contain the list. Okay, the union, state, and concurrent list is contained in the 7th schedule. We studied the 5th schedule, we studied the 6th schedule, we studied the 11th schedule, the panchayats, we studied the 12th schedule, and this 7th schedule will contain the union, state, and concurrent list. And I repeat, schedule is just an additional list. Okay, mentioned in the end of the Indian Constitution for overall convenience, not to make the Constitution too bulky. Okay, they created a separate list. That's the only meaning about schedule. There's no extraordinary meaning behind the word schedule. So based on the 7th schedule, this is a foundation of center-state legislative relations. In what subjects can the center make laws? In what subject can the state make laws? Let's find out. So these are the examples. Okay, legislative powers. Legislative means the power to make laws, right? This is the relationship between the center and the union. The union list will contain subjects such as defense. It's very obvious, right? Defense, security. How can we give the power, legislative power to the states? We cannot, and we shouldn't. It should be directly controlled by the center. Even foreign affairs, it's too risky to be given to the states. And even currency, right? Currency, again, another very dangerous. Railways, even railways. If the railways were given to the states, the railway would cease to be cheap, I think, most likely. Since the union government has monopoly over the railways, even though quality biya ase, so railway is very important for the transportation of people across India, which is why they have full control over railways as well. And banking be, okay, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, it doesn't give powers to the state to make laws. The RBI make laws for all the private banks, for all the public banks, every bank, scheduled commercial banks, regional rural banks, every kind of financial institutions, the RBI makes laws. Again, diwa na diwa state ke nadia bhal na banking de do Nagaland government real imagine tai interest rate can set kure he'll be influenced both by the undergrounds as well as the ministers who may not be too educated to make laws. Okay, so citizenship, another very important thing. If the states were given power on citizenship, Nagaland would accept the people, the Tangkul Nagas as Naga Indian citizen, right? The people from Dirab Changlang area in Arunachal Pradesh can be considered a citizen of Nagaland, and people from China, Myanmar can all come in. So again, union list. Okay, the union has the power to make laws for all these subjects. State list to police ase. Now defense to army kan ajay, air force ajay, navy ajay, but police to state law ase. Nagaland police koi na, Nagaland police. So the police to state list ase. You understand, right? It's police to state te kiman important ase. Agriculture, reasonably so. A state list, public order, public health, local government, village council and so forth, panchayats. I said that election commission of I explained the difference about election commission of India and state election commission, right? The state creates the state election commission, and the state election commission makes rules for and also conducts elections for local government, the municipal council, the town council, the village council and so forth. And then the land, okay, land is also considered a state list. Now, congruent list is a list in which both can make laws, both can legislate, both has legislative powers over. Okay, so now we're discussing about how the relationship between the union and the states with regard to legislative powers. And in the congruent list, both the state and the union has a power to legislate on matters such as education. Again, obvious, right? Education is a concurrent list. Okay, so education is universal. Some states, they have their own local dialect included in the curriculum. We have the Tenyide dialect, right? We also have the Lotha dialect and so forth. And education, union can also make laws, state can also make laws. Marriage, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Forest, again, it makes sense. Every state unique as a forest. Electricity, again, it makes sense. Electricity. Criminal law, kumba electricity. If the union make laws for electricity, imagine the complaints that they would receive. It's too risky. Again, it's a very strategic move by the union government. Okay, some subjects that may be too controversial, they keep it in the concurrent list. Because electricity is a sensitive issue also. If the union government, if it were the only institution that has a power to provide electricity, just imagine, if it were the only institution that could provide electricity, yadi Nagaland electricity komti pa mon complain kro do. Will be electricity komti pa bisi pa mon nicho ke blame kro do itya do. Kile mo la government led by our honorable CM Rio. Na we do not have enough hydro projects. Now the power capacity, okay, power generation capacity of hydro dams in Nagaland is more than 1,000 megawatts. Okay, that's enough to power the entire state 24/7. But how many do we have? Only 110. Okay, aro Gujarat come to 55,000 as we do the comparison. I'm one like EXO as aro the EXO by run Gujarat and one Kine na. Kine the thermal power, coal, koila ba chulai. That's the largest source of electricity in India. Coal, koila power ba kini yedi pusabe bisi jai na iniga. So but mon aro dams can create korgile ajigale Tiku river de create korle. Which are the districts to be affected? Longleng, Mon, Mokshung, aro Zonepoto. Will be kumba village council can in certain districts Because we have Article 371A land rights as a, so if we say no, it's a no, right? Bahar the Indian government ba dam go chaka create kodibo aro rehabilitation yadi boa manuan kani rehabilitate kuro government job do dana khushi asu do Nagaland de do ek chun chairman ekta ba no guli bi no as do Article 371A, which is why I always talk about making changes to Article 371A. Ito karni mon dams be create corona pare do na don't development be nahe do ekta side to real ke be plan gole be ase but ekta side mon nijor ke be sawale be ase. Okay, so electricity, criminal law, it's a part of concurrent list. Criminal law, now the nature of crime so alag thake do kunba Muslim dominated state te do tahan la laws kan olok na ekta thake Nagaland de do mon Christian ase aru kunba kan Hindu ase to mon do Robert ki conduct te bi maaf kodishna I mean maaf kore in a sense church institutions kan very embarrassing. Now labor welfare would be concurrent list ase. Okay, so both the union and the state can make laws with regards to the concurrent list. Now is it clear the legislative relation between the union and the state, okay, to make laws? Okay, so tan majority India divide kurse union kan oh abdi udu lubi moi udu rakhibo aro olop sensitive kan do at concurrent list rakhi diu ni mon ekilo na that's a relationship. Okay, that's a relationship, and it gets deeper. Now I just explained it. At the moment, I think most of you during your college days, for people who took arts, initially we had certain subjects and now we have these subjects. The union list has had these many subjects and these many subjects. Did you guys read about it? The state list had 61 subjects, 58 subjects, but now we have 66 subjects, 47 to 52 and so forth. Okay, the data might not be too correct. The latest data is approximately 100 subjects for union list, state list 61 subjects, and concurrent list 52 subjects. Okay, so all the defense, railway, uto under 5 to 6 ekla tikaishe, but there are 100 subjects. What 100 to amni members ko baro? Na baro do. So ito karna ini 5 to 6 members ko be. Memorize it very well and then use it in your examination. Okay. So uto asen state list 61, concurrent list 52 subjects. It keeps on changing. It always keeps on changing. Now Article 247. Now we studied about 245, 246, now 247. Parliament may establish additional courts. Better administration of laws made by Parliament. Why is it important? States do not possess this specific constitutional power. An example, National Green Tribunal for Environmental Laws and CBI Courts of Federal Corruption. Now it says that Parliament may establish additional courts. Okay, in any state, additional courts in any state. For example, NGT for environment laws to legislate on environment laws, CPI courts for any kind of corruption. Ta utuan create corona pare state pra. Khali sender ba create koro pare bo na mention kuri gina ase. That's also one of the legislative relations. Okay, for matters relating to legislation or making up laws of the National Green Tribunal will create laws. And who creates this court? It is a center. Okay, so utuan additional any situation that I ledo, it is a center that creates additional courts. Koi gina mention kuri gina say. That's it. The state cannot, only the center can, right, to make laws for any matters that may come into being based on the change in time. International Green Tribunal for environmental laws, because we have global warming. Back then we didn't have it, but need arises, right? And whenever the need arises, any kind of courts can be created by the center. Okay, that's it. Residuary powers. No, this is another power that is not mentioned in union list, state list, or concurrent list. Kumba missing hoile. Judi kumba subjects kan missing hoi jaile do. Residuary powers ko de subjects not mentioned in any of the three lists, yet only Parliament alone has the authority. And there are lots of residuary laws that are not mentioned in the three lists. For example, cyber laws, AI, digital currency, space technology, and new emerging subjects, right? Kita ba mon misat pray about dunia to change way, so we need new laws and this and that. So only the parliament alone has the authority to make laws, okay? And usually what happens is that once they create it, they insert it in either state law, union law, or concurrent law. But the thing is that new subjects can only the parliament can create it. The state cannot create it. Okay. Now, what does the state do? The state make laws on subjects already created by the union government. Okay. But it is the union government that can create subjects. Now, Article 249, Parliament legislating on state lease. Now, the Parliament can legislate on state lease. Okay. Now, Rajya Sabha, one very important section that I forgot to teach you guys. Not zero ase. Okay, when you study it, you will find it. Two special powers of the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha two special powers. One is that power to declare a subject of state list as a subject of national importance, and two, power to create or abolish all India services. Okay, IAS can, UPSC can na pura Rajya Sabha create. They can create it, they can abolish it. The UPSC exam itself was created by Rajya Sabha. Okay, so these are the two special powers, and one of which is mentioned in Article 249, Parliament legislation on state list. Rajya Sabha, if the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution by 2/3 majority, which means special majority, right? Not simple majority, 2/3 majority of members present in voting. If the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution stating that the state list is of national importance and it's necessary for the Parliament to legislate on it, then the Parliament can, okay, it can do that. It can legislate on state list. Reason, national interest. So earlier we discussed about, can anyone remember any subject in the state list earlier? Anyone subject in the state list? Police, right? So police there, the state is the one that makes laws, okay? But in certain situation, if the Rajya Sabha declares, passes a resolution, 2/3 majority, special majority, and passes a resolution saying that it's of national interest for the union government to interfere in a state subject, specifically the police in the state of Nagaland for national interest, then union government they can make laws on state list. Iniga ase. So again, Parliament get extra power diase through the Rajya Sabha. But why only Rajya Sabha? Because Lok Sabha ke power disuguli to Modi to khushi shu guru to am to ambi jani ase. Lebi Rajya Sabha ke diya garni to protect kure do na. Validity is 1 year, but it can be renewed repeatedly even for 100 years. It can be renewed, and renewal will also need majority, special majority from the Rajya Sabha. Okay, so that's it. Article 249. Article 250. Again, another way in which the Parliament can legislate on state subject is through national emergency. National emergency is the article as a Article 352. Okay, national emergency. State emergency is 356. 360 is financial emergency. Now, financial emergency has never been declared, but national emergency has been declared in the past 3 times. Now, during national emergency, the Parliament controls the state, right? It's obvious, and they can also legislate on any state list. Okay, police, for example, it's a state subject, but the Parliament can make police laws during national emergency. That's the only statement in Article 250. Now, Article 251. Article 251, inconsistency between laws. Parliament makes a law under Article 249 or 240, okay, during national emergency, or if Rajya Sabha declares that a subject of state list is a subject of national importance, then the Parliament can make laws, right? Under 249, Rajya Sabha resolution lage, 250 though, national emergency time there, right? We discussed about that just few seconds ago. So if a state law conflicts with parliamentary law, itula situation there. Police they already law as go Nagaland there. Aro parliament bra national emergency aise or Rajya Sabha bra resolution declare bra them there aise. Aigina do in these two situations, natun police law banaise. To kunla law. parliament la law ko na yadi state Korea as article 251 de in case of inconsistency between laws. Okay, so the state law becomes inoperative to the extent of inconsistency. Only to the extent of inconsistency, state law will continue to be enforced, but it will be inoperative once it reaches the point of inconsistency with the parliament laws. Okay, that was a very important point. Now, Article 252, Parliament legislating for states by consent. Again, there are certain situations, okay, in which Twitter state, Assam or Nagaland, problem ekta ulai se do, "At baba, na union government ke koi na, baba ek bar moi garne the law banai dibi do, moi mon garne uniform law banai dibi do, bole do center ba banai dibo." So, if the states give their consent, the parliament can make laws for the states. Ina digina as they. Two or more state legislatures, they pass resolution in their own respective legislative assembly requesting the parliament to make laws. So, if that's the case, then they'll make the laws for these two states, and other states may adopt it later. It is up to the states. Okay. The first example, Price Competitions Act. The Price Competitions Act they do man detail do na jabo, but what this is that gambling. Okay. Gambling crossword puzzle na crossword newspaper ta thake na the crossword ta poila do baji gambling bishi thaki do tan crossword kan solve kro ina igna paisa kamao na manu beshi paisa tupise beshi tupaise almost every state ta thaki de poila na to ina hwadam de do states kan sob prado nijor state de law banaile do ara actual manu alag state de jabo actual manu alag state de jaina khilibo kunde law komjor jai tadi do your state bishi ba मिलीगेना अत बाबा कोई ना यूनियन के जाएगा ना मन सब करने law बनाई नहीं भी and so the central government they made the law, the Price Competitions Act, which provided regulations for gambling. Okay, gamble really up to a certain limit. For example, 1,000, 2,000 inana imanta gambling grow paro aro utula operated gambling grow na paro koina rules banaise to sub state that passed resolution requesting the parliament. These states they adopted it, and later some other states they adopted it. Okay, so in a situation there, the parliament can legislate for states by the consent of the states. Remember that state law consent like yeah. Water pollution control legislation be the example as but one example is enough. Article 253. Yedi do international treaties kane ko ase. Khali international treaties kane. So the parliament can make laws on any subject, including those in the state, to implement international treaties, international agreements, international conventions, decision made in international conferences. Now just imagine, India global warming ase. Aro kumba states kan kido. Let's take the example of Gujarat. Okay, Gujarat do aro Delhi. Utuan do Delhi the union territory is forget about it. Let's talk about Gujarat. Let's talk about Maharashtra. Yedi industries kan bishi asido. Pollution iman bishi uthi asido. Na now state la subject la bithore tahan certain laws panaze, but SDG Sustainable Development Goals, though it was introduced by the United Nations in the year 2015, right, to set targets for reducing pollution across the world. Okay, so the Indian government attended in the international conference. They came back to India and they imposed this law on all the states. That's what the Article 353 states. The parliament can make laws on even state lists, concurrent union lists, to implement any kind of international treaties and agreements. Okay, SDG goals is one very good example. Environmental laws. Okay, Yadi mentioned environment protection laws. Right, we have the SDG goals. It's mandatory for all the states. One Nagaland devi SDG la goals to call reach kurule mandate kurigina as central government bana mongi digina as the World Trade Organization related legislation. Our trade carnibi to ensure uniformity, climate change commitments. Okay, so and so. Zero pollution, zero carbon target. Be more set kurigina say. We have set a lot of targets. India set a lot of targets, and every state contribute korle the target to meet krudo. Na, and maybe in the future, for example, or in the past, okay. Do you guys have you guys read about the Indo-China War of 1962? This is the only war that India lost. Okay, 이더니 China kin lagi do dan. Sida na. 이더니 China kin lagi do. They defeated the Bangladeshis against the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis, they tried to capture Bangladesh. Utu time they India ra jaigina protect Russia Bangladesh. Utu time they US, UK, everyone supported Pakistan. Okay. Last ikun mon ke save Russia issue. They came with the submarines and say anyone who touches India, the whole war. Couldn't be international countries can interfere no race between India and Pakistan. And then we won against the Pakistanis. We brutally defeated them. It only Pakistan can one kill like it. Our one be China lahat pa harise. 1962 Indo-China war guide. India versus China war de harise. So uta hara them de. Now how is it related to this gulido? They had an international treaty signed that certain part of Jammu and Kashmir will be given to China as part of the agreement. The Aksai Chin area gunas de. Now Jammu Kashmir de inika asu do na. To apni la to your right, there says Aksai Chin area, okay. China law the border asu do. Aksai Chin area katina mathala olop katina China ge di disido. So even though India map shows that Aksai Chin is part of India, disputed territory as it ta utup time de lui lusido. To tadi Aksai Chin area de po monu bi ku corona pare no e. Utu nisna ko state ekta je Jammu Kashmir bi holi bi tan bi ku corona pare do. For international treaties and agreements, the center has a full power to legislate. Okay. Now, Article 244 or 54, inconsistency between the union and state lease applies to only concurrent lease. Now, concurrent lease to the key, marriage, utuan dido, state or union ekilo law banao pare. But in case tajon or conflict do, union like choose grow. Is that clear? Union law prevails over state law. Khali for the concurrent lease, okay? Now Article 255, requirements as to recommendations and previous sanctions. Certain bills require the President's recommendation, the Governor's recommendation, previous sanction. For example, any ekta bill pass kurishe, every bill requires the recommendation of the President, right? So if you do not acquire the recommendation of the President, but last the President la SN paise, na kita ba mistake to hoy jay do. Modi ra, for example, law ekta pass kushe, to personal recommendation lage do. Huli bi tai law anai, okay? Law anai gule do according to law do. The bill shouldn't be passed, okay? But judi President ba buji dia se apni olo policy moila SN di dio na last the SN do lage do the SN do recommendation do law na but SN do luise recommendation no lele bi SN luise gule do the law is deemed to have been passed to uto kitia ba mon na pungcha gane to law do article do add kurala ase kitia ba na pungcha hoy jay even this in the state Governor la recommendation no lele last it la SN law tak to maaf kuri dia se recommendation no law gani goina this law states that okay, if these procedural requirements are accidentally omitted but the required SN is ultimately obtained, the law does not become invalid. Invalid no hoy. Okay. So this is to prevent technical procedural mistakes from invalidating legislation. Legislation kurigna invalidate kuriledo piana itu garne. Now legislative relations. The Constitution distributes legislative powers through the 7th schedule. Okay, this is a summary that we just discussed, legislative, and next we will discuss administrative, and I think we will continue with the financial relations on Monday. Now this is a summary. Do not forget union, state and concurrent lease. That's the relationship, the actual relationship between the union and the state when it comes to legislative relations. Okay, the parliament can legislate on state lease in special situations. I said in times of national emergency, national interest to Rajya Sabha declare na, and then state par request kurshigle to the state par oi baba na, and international treaties. Okay, these 4 conditions in a time there Parliament can legislate on state list. So next we will start with administrative relations. I will give you guys a 2-minute break. Okay. Does anybody want water? So we will be now moving on. We will be learning administrative relations between the union and states. Okay, it's also part of part 11, relations between the union and states. We have administrative relations, we have legislative relations. So we covered legislative relations. So it's just around 10 to 12 slides. We will complete it, and then today's session will be ended after the administrative relations. Now, if you take a look at the administrative relations between the union and states, Article 256 to Article 263 covers administrative relations. We will study 256, 7, 8, 9, 260, 61, 62, 63. Okay, we studied those eight articles. So these articles regulate how the union and states cooperate in administration. It's all about administration, okay? It's all about administration. They ensure uniform implementation of laws and coordination between governments, and also national unity, administrative efficiency, okay? Administrative efficiency. Now, Article 256 states that the topic is obligation of states and union directions. Every state must ensure compliance with laws made by Parliament. The union government may issue directions to the state for implementing parliamentary laws. The purpose is to maintain uniform administration throughout India, which means any kind of administrative laws made by the Indian Parliament must be obeyed by the states. Must be obeyed by the states. There are lots of administrative laws made by the central government. General financial rules, there be certain administrative laws insert Kurigana, and then the post of commissioner, chief secretary, all these are made by the Indian Parliament, which are implemented by the state government. Even the post of IS officers, the post of deputy commissioners for administration, these are created by the Parliament, okay? And every state must comply with it. And it also, even there's also one law that mandates that deputy commissioners should be IS officers. Mala state EC kan ke di na sibak to. Olibi name hisab de to IS officers kan ni deputy commissioner ho pare. Okay, ini ase. Now 256 you understand. Article 257, control of the union over states. Again, in what way does the union have control over states in administrative matters? States must exercise their executive powers without obstructing the executive powers of the union. Okay? The union may issue directions regarding national highways, means of communication, railways, protection of union property. So every time the state exercise the executive power, it should not obstruct the executive power of the union. Okay? For example, the national highway. National highway, it's part of the union list. So national highway create korle ase, yede Nagaland national highway create korle ase, Dimapur to Kohima national highway. So state prataila executive power use kurigina plantation la drive ekta jaise along the national highway. So would obstruct Korea's to executive power of the union to create national highways between Dimapur to Kohima. To the national highway create kuradamde state la executive power ba obstruct no kuro lagi. Ina guas de. So for overall development, na railway labi ina se railway track kan kiki kan tade state pa aigina khushi kuro na bro. Union property is union property. Union law is union law. Okay, so it is done to safeguard national interests. Now, Article 258, delegation of union functions to states. Kunba functions can union bra state ke dio pare. So there are certain functions of the union government that can be delegated to the states. Example, I've given passport Aadhaar. First, let us go through it. The president may entrust union executive functions to a state government with the consent of the state government and subject to agreed conditions. Okay. Purpose, administrative convenience and better governance. Passport, it's part of the union list. Aadhaar is part of the union list. Census is part of the union list. But census the state government get delegate kurigina to go from one house to another to collect the census. Indian passport P, we have our own regional passport, right? That the state la employees can use kure, okay, to issue Indian passport. Aadhaar DB, we have the Aadhaar correction center sob jaga de na aro Aadhaar la office can be as a, okay. So ekta collaboration between the union and states, even though it's part of the union list, union executive function, the president may entrust union executive functions to the state government. Personal signature lage, but it's always the president, okay. But reality, Modi and his council of ministers, every time there's a mention about the president, it's always the council of ministers led by Modi that does everything. But nam do personal na nam do. So I think you understand delegation of union functions to states. Now Article 258, delegation of state functions to the union. Okay. we can request again एक state ला function तो union के request करो पारे अपनी बाबा अपनी अलग मदद करी दिवी ना अपनी रा handle करी दिवी मोरम बा another one very simple example is UPSC conducting recruitment for a state government on the state's request कुंबा state kan बा request करे दे UPSC के अमी वाला exam conduct कर दिवी to ensure fairness and transparency and since you guys have better technologies please conduct it because it's a very sensitive exam then UPSC will conduct it if the union government agrees okay so utula se article agela article do 258 do union bra state kan ge kuri dibi na aro 258 a the state kan bra union ge kuri dibi koina na that's how administration overall administration of examinations and various other administrative matters that's how you know they maintain the friendship the relationship okay now article 2 1959 omitted removed to napurubi we move to article 260 jurisdiction outside India any matter administrative matter outside of India is directly under the hands of the union the state has no power over any kind of matter related to jurisdiction outside of India India la bahar de kushi gule do jurisdiction do union government over the government of India may undertake executive legislative judicial functions in territories outside India condition there must be an agreement with the foreign government concerned okay example Sikkim do it was not part of India until 1975 okay 1975 tak do tan the kingdom thagise hoile be since Sikkim be ala countries kan be mon lot iv na China kan be mangi thagise to Sikkim be olo bui gaise now Sikkim ba ko ase India ke you become an Indian protectorate you protect us you make certain laws for us na to Sikkim was an Indian protectorate not a part of India before 1975 okay India ba protect kori thakise our administration they be help kori thakise so the only thing that article 260 is saying is that outside the territory of India they be union government jaigina executive legislative or judicial functions koro pare okay it rarely happens and one very rare occurrence is when Sikkim was in Indian protectorate until 1975. 1975 day with the pressure of the people of Sikkim. Okay, they usurped, they removed the monarch, and then they declared Sikkim to be a democratic state, a part of India, and then it became a part of India in 1975. Okay, so utula situation as Article 261. Public acts, records, and judicial proceedings throughout India. Public acts, public records, judicial proceedings shall receive full faith and credit, which means any act of the state of Nagaland, government of Nagaland, eku act declare gushe, eku public records kan rakise, eku judicial proceedings kan gushe. The ekta state la law do alag state par respect kuro lage with full faith and credit. Union probably full faith and credit pra Nagaland government la ki mon ek pass kushe accept kuro lage Assam government la bhi mon respect kuro lage inya la ase for all the states na to for overall administrative convenience every public acts every public record every judicial proceedings in related to administration administer kura dam de mohan la laws bhi accept kuro lage Assam la laws kan bhi accept kuro lage mohan bra okay mohan bhi Nagaland government act pass kurigina ase ki alag state Nagaland house thakibo we have a Nagaland house in Kolkata Shillong Delhi na for the people of Nagaland Nagas kan jagina idi safely po parbo now Delhi government babi accept kurshi do Shillong government babi accept kurshi Kolkata government babi accept kurshi similarly tahan bi kiba ta yedi banao mun jai to mohan bi accept kuro lage aru union central employees na state employees na central employees kan bhi yedi aigena IS officers kan boido tahan la salary emoluments kan sob bhi central government ba de rules and regulations service conditions kan sob tahan ba regulate kore do we say anything does the Nagaland government go against it no it doesn't go against it na India action laga state majority bi union state union majority bi respect kuro lage. Public acts, public records, judicial proceedings. Okay, that's the only meaning in Article 261. Now, adjudication of state river water disputes. The only thing that is saying is that in case of interstate river water disputes, the Parliament has full power to adjudicate on matters, not the Supreme Court. It is Supreme Court interfere ko na pare go na yedi digina ase. Pani la, Cauvery River dispute, Krishna River dispute, Ravi Base dispute kan thagishe past it. Uton so Parliament bra handle kore. It is explicitly mentioned in the Indian Constitution exclusion of Supreme Court jurisdiction in such disputes. Kili pani do beshi sensitive issue ekta hoje. Even for the Supreme Court to decide. Supreme Court, it is almost impossible for the Supreme Court to decide. Kili ground reality janyo lage. Public grievances kan ekta letra kam ekta ase when it comes to water. Kuma jaga da dam banele pani komdi ho jai. China the dams kan bana karne Mohan Brahmaputra River Assam de pani kumdi aye na inigala nisna state majode bi when it comes to water Modi ji aru dala council ministers the Indian Parliament they make laws letra kam guru nina guru jede guru ton bi utu buji bi ton ha pusa kiman lo nilu bi ton na ekta Supreme Court pa charge karo na para like ta ho jai. It's a very sensitive issue, very complicated issue. To Parliament bra kore. Okay, interstate river water disputes. You guys might think it's very simple, okay? Because Nagaland dito na ito. Chito mutu river as a mondo what bahar dito ba. Intas kangka utuan aro utuan la source of livelihood ase manula fishing kan kore na West Bengal kan ay man pishi important as de rivers kan do bahar dito. Aro dahan do Hindus kan as do. To tahan la holy water kan tage kangka de na tadila pani khali bi bimar no hoi goi dahan, and we respect their custom, we respect their religion. So inyadak ase bahar do. And interstate council, zonal council no ide. Zonal council means north, east, west, south, and then we had the northeast council. Na moi explain ko siya puila zonal councils created by 1956 of State Reorganization Commission. State Reorganization Act of 1956 ba 5 zonal councils create Krisha, Central, North, East, West, South. And then later on, 1970s, the Northeast Council Asia. But these two interstate council ase. Assam or Nagaland majude ekta council create kruwa. Na Manipur or Tripura majude interstate council ekta create kruwa. Utula ko asbe yedi. So president may establish an interstate council if it serves public interest. Again, president bolive council of ministers na Modi ji. Okay, always remember. Tala function do interstate dispute kema ekta hoise na subject of common interest kema ekta hoise to promote coordination, recommend policies, etc. Okay, it was established in 1990, and by default the chairperson of the interstate council do Modi thake de. I mean prime minister, but idia Modi ase to Modi hobo by default. And then yedi members kan do every state law chief minister ase na aro union territories like lieutenant governor and then administrators. Okay, and then 6 union cabinet ministers tala Modi la council ministers de chuita tagiwa, including home minister who is Amit Shah at the moment right now. They are nominated by the prime minister. And all these miligina interstate council dangor wala do khuli ase do dangor wala interstate council do khulise utu machinar chutu interstate council bi khulibo pare. Okay, chutu interstate council ase gule Assam aro Manipur ase gule do Assam aro Manipur la chief minister ekla lobo Modi ji thakibo tala council of ministers thakibo. But overall de tan so ase aro the interstate overall council de tan ki kure gule do tan decide kure ki ase taxation kan laga every state effect wala issues kan sob discuss kure de. Now this is a summary of administrative relations between the union and states. Okay. Please go through it. I'll give you guys time.